All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Schelberg, and welcome to today's National Forensics Technology webinar hosted by TechHalo. And for those of you joining us for the first time, TechHalo was created with a simple mission to advance public safety through technology education and peer-driven collaboration. We believe the impact of technology on saving lives and protecting communities is both under-discussed and underestimated. Every day, incredible tools and innovations are changing how we work in law enforcement, forensic science, and public service. And TechHalo exists to bring those stories, lessons, and connections to light. TechHalo isn't just an educational platform, it's a community. We're a network of professionals dedicated to using technology to make our communities safer and our work more effective. Whether it's rapid DNA, 3D crime scene mapping, or any other innovation transforming public safety, we're here to make sure those advancing these tools have a space to learn from one another and move forward together, especially with how fast technology is progressing today. We host events like this one to share real-world insights, not just concepts, but proven practices that agencies can take back and use immediately. And although this is a national event, we are thrilled to see hundreds of attendees joining us today from not just across the United States, but also from across the world. And it's a great reminder that we are all here together for the same reason, to move public safety forward through innovation and collaboration. At the end of the session, I'll give a brief overview of how you can get more involved with TechHalo and continue connecting with others in this community. And I also want to take a moment to say thank you, thank you, thank you to our sponsors, Faro Technologies and Thermo Fisher Scientific. We wouldn't be able to bring this information to you today without their support. And both teams are here with us in the audience, so if you have questions for them directly, feel free to drop them in the chat. And also feel free to drop questions in the chat for open discussion with our speakers, sponsors, and other attendees, or use the Q&A box located at the bottom center of your screen if you'd like to ask something directly to the speakers or have a question that requires a more thorough response. And we'll cover those questions from the Q&A box at the end of the session, and all those questions will be anonymous. And with that said, we will now hear from Chris Asplin giving opening remarks. Chris is currently the Executive Director for the National Criminal Justice Association, which represents state criminal justice agencies in the development of effective criminal justice programs. Prior to starting this role in 2016, Chris was a prosecutor and assistant U.S. attorney. Chris has also had various forensic technology roles, including being appointed by Attorney General Janet Reno as the Executive Director of the National Commission on the Future of DNA Evidence. Thank you for joining us, Chris. Over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the country or in the world. We really appreciate your having joined us today for what is an increasingly important and relevant discussion about law enforcement and crime fighting in general. I think that if I had a kind of a subtitle for this presentation and for what you're going to hear from our speakers, it would be speed and surety in the criminal justice system. And that would really be emphasizing the value and the importance of the speed of solving crime, but also the surety that we're getting the right person and the surety that we're convicting that person as well. And I think the two technologies that we're going to talk about today kind of really kind of hit those buttons really, really well. I think they're really important and again are increasingly important both in the identification of perpetrators, the identification of the right perpetrators, and then ultimately giving prosecutors the right tools to prove that case in court. And so I come to this discussion today as much, maybe more as a former prosecutor looking to identify perpetrators and convict them, almost more so than in my current role as executive director of the National Criminal Justice Association. But let me start with this. Many of you folks may know about the Arnold Foundation, the actually Arnold Ventures now. Arnold Ventures is a philanthropy that works in a number of different spaces, but one of their largest portfolios is actually crime fighting and criminal justice. And they spend a lot of time in the policy space, for example, how to address fines and fees in the criminal justice system, sentencing alternatives and such. But yesterday, or maybe the day before, in the Washington Examiner, Jen Doliak, the executive vice president for criminal justice, wrote an op-ed piece that really addressed the urgency and the value of actually fighting crime and solving crime in the first place. What she says in her op-ed is there's an important piece missing from our national discourse about crime and public safety. She says, while we can debate how long people should be locked up once they are caught, the more pressing issue is how few crimes are solved in the first place. Research tells us that crime, what deters crime, isn't harsh punishment. She explains, and it's not long sentences, she explains for many crimes, the chance of someone being caught and held accountable is very low. For instance, the clearance rate for robbery is less than 30%. This understanding should alter the way we think about public safety. More resources need to be invested in solving crime. That includes hiring and training more detectives, as well as investing in new technologies like DNA databases. And I think that Dr. Doliak really hits the point well, that the big deterrent is, much more than anything else, is the likelihood of being caught. And that's really the value of rapid DNA technology. We all, if you're on this webinar, you most likely understand the correlation between the impact of solving crime quickly and then ultimately preventing other crimes, right? We all know that the sooner you get a perpetrator off the street, the sooner your crime rate drops because that particular person isn't out there any longer being allowed to perpetrate those crimes. Well, nothing has impacted the criminal justice system like rapid DNA has. And I'll tell you, as the executive director of the National Commission on the Future of DNA, gosh, now 25 years ago, I hate to admit that, but we never even contemplated that DNA could possibly be tested within 30, 40, 50 minutes. It just wasn't really on our radar. We had very, very smart people, including Nobel Prize winners. Um, the idea that we could actually take DNA to or take analysis equipment to a crime scene or in police vehicles or in police stations was just nowhere on the charts. However, it's kind of axiomatic that if we can solve it that quickly, if we can solve it from the time we arrive on the crime scene or the time that the perpetrator comes into the police station, that changes the whole dynamic from there moving forward with any given case, right? Our direction in the investigation and our resources in the investigation become much more efficient and much more effective because we're targeting the right person, most likely, if we're getting that DNA testing done originally. And that's really the value of forensic DNA from a rapid perspective and database expansion, obviously, as well. But once we get to that point, and let's assume that we've implemented rapid DNA technology as quickly and as effectively as we can, we're then at the next stage, which is the stage of proving that point in court. That always has to be our ultimate responsibility and our ultimate goal. We can never assume that because we have DNA that we have a conviction. That's just not the way it works. That's not the way our system works. But now that we have an ability, like we do with the 3D crime scene reconstruction, I can tell you as a prosecutor that is tremendously valuable to be able to put into place, to be able to put the jurors in place where the crime actually occurred is not only valuable, but I would suggest to you that increasingly it's going to become an expectation, right? I tell you, in my personal life, I'm in the process of building a house. My architect can tell me exactly what the inside of the house is going to look like. They have these incredible 3D models that allow me to feel completely comfortable with what's going to go on in that house. Well, that's what we need to get to and where we are getting to, thanks to the new technologies like Pharaoh's putting forward. We need to be able to do that with jurors as well, because eventually they're going to get to the point where they're going to start asking questions. Well, why can't we see that? We know this technology exists. We know all the cool things we can do on our video games. Why couldn't we just see it? And defense attorneys, if you don't do it, they're going to ask that question. Well, Why didn't they put you there? They certainly can. It's exactly what happened with DNA as DNA became more prevalent. When DNA wasn't there, the question was asked by defense, well, if it wasn't there, why not? And the prosecution has the responsibility of presenting that DNA evidence. And if they didn't present it, isn't that a problem with their case? Well, increasingly, I think we'll see that with the way we present evidence in court as well. Jurors' expectations are only going to expand moving forward. So I think that the opportunity that we have today to look at these kinds of technologies and the implementations of these two technologies in particular really do help us address that issue of surety in the criminal justice system, surety and speed, that we identify the person quickly, we identify the right person, and then ultimately we get to that point where we're securing convictions because we've placed jurors at the scene of the crime where the story is crystal clear to them because they feel like they're there. It's really a combination of invaluable tools that I'm really glad we had the opportunity to hear about today. So with that, let me just say thank you again to our speakers, to Lieutenant James Hawkins from the Fisher Police Department and from Sheriff Byron O'Neill from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office in Oregon. And with that, I will say again, thank you to all of you for joining us and turn it over to Lauren. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chris, for that very thoughtful perspective on how technology continues to transform forensics. And to build on that, we'll now share a short piece from Thermo Fisher Scientific highlighting how rapid DNA is being used in the field.
From the moment a call comes in, the clock starts running. 911, Steve. The resort's crime labs. Never more complex cases than been waiting days, weeks, or even months for answers. But that's time you don't have. With every passing minute, memories fade. Things deteriorate. Suspects flee. It's a race against time that can sometimes feel like a losing battle. But what if there was a way to get answers for the families who desperately need them faster than ever before? Imagine there's a tool that can accurately link someone to a crime and eliminate the wrongly accused in the time it takes to watch a movie. Now, getting the answers you need in just minutes is no longer fiction. It's reality. At Thermo Fisher Scientific, we share your mission to make the world safer. For over 30 years, we've provided forensic laboratories worldwide with gold standard forensic tools. And now, the power of DNA is revolutionizing policing as you know it. In just 90 minutes, rapid DNA technology gives you the answers to focus on the right suspect. Right from the very start of an investigation, so you can protect your community, bring justice to those who seek it, identify the missing, and help prevent tomorrow's victims. It's time to start winning the battle with the clock, because 90 minutes can change everything.
Thank you to Thermo Fisher Scientific for providing that incredible video and powerful look at the capabilities of rapid DNA. And what's really exciting is to see how it's being used every day in departments. And to share how this works on the ground, we're joined by Lieutenant Jim Hawkins from the Fishers Police Department, who will walk us through their experience using rapid DNA in active investigations. Lieutenant Hawkins has been a law enforcement officer for 19 years, spending the last 17 working for the Fishers Police Department in Fishers, Indiana. He is currently assigned to the Investigations Division as the supervisor over the Forensic Services Unit. Lieutenant Hawkins is responsible for organizing, training, and implementing new technology. Over to you, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Lauren. And hoping the screen came up okay.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for having me here today. I know we had some audio issues with the video, so if anybody has any additional questions, my contact information will be up at the end. I'll be happy to speak with anybody if you have any questions about rapid DNA. But I think most people in this room probably have a general idea of what it is. So what I don't want to do is take you guys down a rabbit hole of all the different ins and outs of rapid DNA. The long and the short of it is it's going to allow you to take single source DNA and generate a profile in 90 minutes. That's what the law enforcement side of these really is going to be passionate about. You're going to be able to solve crimes in ways that you haven't been able to in the past. And honestly, you're going to find yourself solving crimes in ways you didn't think even possible with rapid DNA. A lot of rapid DNA, you'll think, okay, I found blood at a crime scene. I went and swabbed it. I put it into the rapid DNA. 90 minutes later, I generate a profile. Yes, it does that. It's fantastic at that. But what I want to show you today, we're focusing in on a lot of casework that the Fishers Police Department's done over the years with rapid DNA. Because what I found from a lot of the audiences here is they want to know how exactly law enforcement is utilizing rapid DNA for various different kinds of cases. So I tried to be eclectic on how I went about choosing the cases for you guys to review. But this is going to be an explanation of how the Fishers Police Department is utilizing rapid DNA. So obviously, there's a couple different rapid DNAs out there. We do use the Thermo Fisher Scientific rapid DNA. We've been very happy with that. With rapid DNA for law enforcement, one of the things you are going to have to consider is your reach back, whether you use private labs, whether you have the ability in-house to do your own reach back. We didn't have that at the Fishers Police Department. We ended up partnering with a local university, the University of Indianapolis, and partnering with Dr. Latham at the University of Indianapolis. We have it set up for them to assist us with our rapid DNA reach back program. So there are different ways to get into that. And as you speak with different agencies that utilize rapid DNA, I'm sure they'll have ideas that I haven't even thought of. So the general idea of how the Fishers Police Department is utilizing rapid DNA is we are focusing on consent and warrant samples coming into our agency from Central Indiana, building that database. And then we are currently linked up with the Indiana State Police unknown DNA database. So we focus a lot on getting knowns in there and using those known samples in order to solve open cases. So I'm going to jump right into it, just get into some casework for you guys so you can get an idea how we're using this. This is something that most law enforcement agencies deal with, the vehicle theft. It's not the most glamorous detail that your officers are going to take, but we all know when you get 30, 40 cars hit in a night, you're going to get a call from your mayor, you're going to get a call from your city council. These things are going to happen. They're going to be problematic. A recent case we had was an organized vehicle theft ring. The vehicle was stolen, later recovered by officers. I sent out one of my criminal forensic investigators. They process the vehicle just like you normally would. You go into it looking for what? DNA, fingerprints. You take your photos, look for any physical evidence that might be left behind. And generally speaking, if you found any of that, you can send it off to your state police lab, and then you would wait until hopefully you got a CODIS hit on. With the availability of rapid DNA, it allows us, again, to get those single source DNA samples in 90 minutes. So an example in this one, as you can see on the photograph, um, the stolen recovered vehicle was located and there was a piece of used chewing gum that was spit out, presumably by the suspect. That was collected, brought back to the lab that day. Sample was taken, put into rapid DNA. We were able to develop a profile from the used chewing gum, and that profile ended up getting to a suspect who we had already collected DNA on another case. So again, going back to that, targeting your known offenders, getting them into your database. And we were able to same day develop probable cause for a search warrant to go and pick this guy up. And as Chris mentioned earlier, getting these guys off of the street, it's hard to put a number on, the amount of damage that person would have caused, the amount of vehicles that person would have stolen, the amount of crimes that would have been committed. Within a matter of a few hours, we were able to get a warrant and pick that suspect up and get him off the street. So it definitely has an intrinsic value to your case, and to your officers and to your jurisdictions. Um, you know, Human trafficking is definitely a hot topic these days, and it is something that we, as law enforcement, want to make sure that we are plugged in on and doing everything we can to prevent. Human trafficking is horrible, and if you never have a human trafficking case in your career, you're probably lucky for it. But the fact of the matter is, it does happen. This was an assist we did for another agency where a juvenile was trafficked for purposes of sex by their biological parents, unfortunately. The investigators were able to make an arrest and get that child away from them, get them in custody. And during the investigation, Child Services located a younger sibling at another location. As we started trying to figure out, as DCS started trying to figure out what to do with this younger sibling, there were multiple adults that came forward and said, I'm related to this person, I'm this person's next of kin. DCS and the other agency obviously had a lot of concerns. They did not want this child to get trafficked herself. They wanted to make sure that this person was going to the right next of kin. And the circumstances, unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of paper trail as to who this child was actually related to. We were able to take swabs from the child and swabs from the adults and rule out the adults that had absolutely no relation to this person. We were able to match it to a biological grandmother, and we were able to get that child out of state custody and into a safe environment with their biological grandmother. So that is just another way we were able to utilize rapid DNA versus having to send it out for conventional DNA and wait several months, depending on what your backlogs actually are. The ubiquitous residential burglary. We know what a headache that those can be. So this case was kind of interesting. Essentially, this case occurred before we had rapid DNA. A unknown juvenile suspect went into an open garage door, went into the house, took keys, stole the car. They ended up getting in a pursuit with our officers. The pursuit ends in an apprehension. We did conventional DNA swabs. We took the known standards from the suspect, and then the car was processed. The DNA matched the suspect's DNA in the car through conventional DNA, and that was the end of the story. We made the arrest, we moved on. Well, as we started implementing rapid DNA, we went back through our property room and looked at what DNA samples we currently have, because that's one of the big hiccups with rapid DNA is where do we start? So we looked at all the samples, and you have many samples in your agency, most likely, you just don't maybe not realize all those DNA samples you have sitting back in your property room that you have consent or warrants for that you can test. We ended up throwing one of these samples in. It happened to be this suspect's sample. Well, when it went into rapid DNA, generated a profile, and that went up to the state police's database of unknown DNA matches. We get a hit back from Carmel, Indiana, And we also get, which is a neighboring jurisdiction to us, as you can see on the map here. We also got one from the Elkhart County Sheriff's Department, which was on the very north side of the state of Indiana. So there's a significant difference, distance between Fishers and Elkhart. Both of those cases, an unknown suspect went into an open garage door, stole keys from a house, got into a car, stole the car, left. Car was recovered. DNA was taken from both of the cars. The suspect was not in CODIS, so there was no match. It just went in as an unknown. When our known went in, we were able to close both of those cases for those other agencies. So just kind of show you the criminals don't care about lines on the map. So we have to, as law enforcement, it behooves us to think past just lines on the map. This was an unfortunate case where the Indiana State University had three students who were unfortunately killed in a fiery car crash. They knew who was in the vehicle. They did not know who was sitting where. And unfortunately, there was not enough left of the remains for any sort of visual identification. Obviously, this was a very publicized death scene for the Vigo County Coroner's Office. And it was a very emotional investigation, very emotional time for the students and staff at the Indiana State University. So there was a lot of pressure to get results quickly so that you get the remains back to the families and ensure proper respect was paid so that they could move forward with their grieving process. So when the Vigo County Coroner's Office reached out and asked if we could help, of course we said yes, but we were able to, in one day, match all of the samples from the remains to their next of kin. So that was just another way, even though this wasn't a criminal case, this was a case where we were able to be a good neighbor. We were able to help out another law enforcement agency in their time of need, which was something we were very happy to be able to do. This case was an armed robbery shooting where officers responded to a robbery, shots fired. The unknown suspect attempted to do an armed robbery on a victim. And during the armed robbery, the victim was shot by the suspect. After being shot, an altercation occurred between the suspect and the victim. And during that altercation, the suspect got blood transfer on his hands from the victim's gunshot. Witnesses in the area reported to the officers that the suspect had ran into a public restroom and then run out a short time later. When investigators went into the restroom, they found bloody towels that presumably the suspect had used to clean up the blood off of its hands. The suspect was a short time later apprehended, and while he was in the interrogation room, denying all of this to the investigators, the blood sample from the bloody rag that you see there was tested in rapid DNA. In 90 minutes, we developed a full profile, matched that to the victim's blood, and when confronted with, hey, we know exactly what you did. You went into this bathroom, you used the towel. This is the towel that you used. We've already matched the DNA to the suspect. The victim. The suspect ultimately gave a confession, and the case was closed that same day. So again, going back to what Chris said, not to beat a dead horse, but the amount of damage, destruction, and chaos that this suspect could have caused had we had to wait for conventional DNA, it's hard to quantify the amount of damage that could have been done by not being able to have probable cause to make the arrest that same day. This was a case where a 12-year-old girl got pregnant. That's how the investigators got involved in this case. And she identified a 19-year-old boyfriend, if you will, whatever. I call him suspect, but that's me. So that she had engaged in sexual activity with. The 19-year-old ended up confessing to sex with a juvenile. After the baby was born, we took buccal swabs from the baby and we compared that to the DNA samples we took from the 19-year-old suspect. And there was a 0.00% match. Well, that causes a problem. Yes, you have the confession. You know that you can deal with those charges right there. but you still have a pregnant 12-year-old and you don't know who did this. So obviously that's going to reactivate the investigation. Um, there were multiple male subjects who lived in the house, and there was definitely concerns from the investigators that there could be some abuse going on. Or rather, or at the very least, we wanted to ensure they wanted to ensure there was not abuse going on in the house. We obtained the DNA samples from all the males that were in the house, ran them. They all came back with a 0% match to the baby. Uh, when that occurred, the 12-year-old was again re-interviewed, confronted with, hey, listen, you're not telling us the whole truth. Um, she was able to give us some names of some other potential partners, and we were able to locate a DNA match for another juvenile that came back as a 99.99% match. So we were able to ultimately identify who actually was the father of this child, and we were able to do it in a matter of hours, not months, which was very helpful to the investigation. So death scenes, we all law enforcement, we all deal with death scenes, but being able to identify the body is obviously going to be step one in your investigation. We had an unattended death. No fingerprints were on file. The body, unfortunately, had been down for a significant amount of time. And when we talk about rapid DNA, blood's always a fantastic tool to utilize in rapid DNA. However, uh, the blood was too degraded in order for us to get any kind of a DNA match from it. It wasn't going to happen. Luckily for us, there's been a lot of advancements in rapid DNA, and one of the improvements that they have made at Thermo Fisher is allowing for the testing of teeth. So at the autopsy, we had a tooth extracted from the remains, uh, brought that back to the lab and processed the tooth for rapid DNA, and we're able to get a 99.99% match to the next of kin sample. So again, not a criminal case, but a case that allowed us to get the case closed for the investigator in a matter of hours rather than a matter of months, so that they could again move on to their next case. So we had a murder-suicide where a husband shot and killed his wife. Unfortunately, and afterwards shot and killed himself. Unfortunately, there was not enough. The scene was in a state that any kind of visual identification wasn't going to be possible. Um, there was a 6-month-old baby that luckily was at the babysitter's at the time of the incident. The baby was not hurt. However, we still needed to identify uh, these bodies so that we could move forward with this homicide investigation. And there was discussion about, how are we going to go about doing this? And I said, well, we can do familial DNA matches, with kinship reports from the rapid DNA. We took samples from both of the remains of the deceased, and then we took a buccal swab from the baby, and in a matter of hours, we're able to have a positive identifications for both the mother and the father, so that we had those bodies ID'd and could move forward with the homicide investigation. So that is the extent of what I have for you guys today. I just want to say thank you very much for everybody for your time and your attention. My contact information is down below. Feel free to reach out should you have any follow-up questions after today. And I am happy to answer any of your questions anytime. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hawkins, for sharing that fascinating look at how rapid DNA is making a real difference in active investigations. Next, we'll shift to another innovation transforming forensics, 3D crime scene mapping. And to give you a closer look, we'll share a short feature from Faro Technologies on how agencies are using 3D laser scanning to capture and preserve crime scenes in precise digital detail.
Public safety, every second matters. Every detail, no matter how big or small, can make the difference between clarity and confusion. That's where Faro Technologies comes in. With industry-leading 3D laser scanning and software solutions, Faro helps law enforcement and public safety professionals document, analyze, and understand every scene faster, safer, and with unmatched accuracy. From crime and crash scene documentation to pre-incident and fire planning, Faro's advanced hardware, like the Focus, Blink, and Orbis laser scanners, captures millions of data points in minutes, preserving every detail in true 3D. Back at the station, Faro's own 3D software transforms that data into powerful reconstructions and visualizations. Investigators can recreate events, take precise measurements, analyze trajectories, and bring juries directly to the scene. Whether you're documenting a crash scene, investigating a crime, or planning a complex response scenario, Faro gives you the tools to work smarter, faster, and with complete confidence. And the best part? Faro's public safety team is made up of former law enforcement and fire service professionals. People who've been there, who understand the challenges, and who are dedicated to helping you get the job done right. Faro, delivering truth through technology to protect those who protect and serve. Because when accuracy matters most, you can trust Faro to bring life to every scene.
Thank you to Faro Technologies for that awesome look at how 3D crime scene mapping is helping agencies capture scenes with incredible precision and clarity. To take this a little deeper into how this technology is being used in real investigations, we are joined by Brian O'Neill from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office in Oregon. Brian has been with the agency since 2006 and serves as the lead reconstructionist for their crime reconstruction and forensic technician team. He is also a Faro trainer and the current president of the International Association of Forensic and Security Metrology. Brian will be sharing how his team uses 3D laser scanning in the field to strengthen investigations and improve courtroom outcomes. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Let me just take a minute to make sure my screen is showing. And you should be seeing it, yes?
Looks good.
Perfect. All right. So a little bit about me. She kind of touched on my background. As you can see, we've done quite a few crash scenes using the Faro scanner. We've had a Faro laser scanner since 2014. About 70% of our workload is crashes versus crime scenes, but we do crime scenes as well and have done over 100 crime scenes. The equipment that we use currently is the Faro S350 laser scanner, as well as SkyDO 2 Plus drone. And I'll show a little later how we kind of use those in conjunction with each other. But first, I want to just talk about all the different things that 3D can bring to the scene. This picture that you see here is a very quick and easy one. This is a Forest Service road up in the mountains where a motorcyclist was driving and crashed unexpectedly. And we couldn't really kind of figure out what it was until we did a scan of the roadway. And this is a heat map that shows that there was actually a divot in the road that didn't really stand out when we were there, but when we started looking at it, realized that when the motorcyclist's front tire hit that divot, it threw him. And so it's kind of an easy and quick way for us to show, what it is that caused that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would say that 3D has brought to the table is visibility, and you'll see that as we go through here. It's how do we show different things. So one of the things that we want to talk about and show oftentimes is the orientation to the scene. So this was a large shootout that we had, officer involved shooting. It was a pursuit that turned into a shooting. And what you've got here is an overview of the scene. You can see all the yellow evidence markers down there are shell casings. The orange lines are trajectory. This is an older case from 2018. So at the time, this is how the software did trajectory. Now you'll see here in a little bit how we actually utilize and show the trajectory appropriately with the 5-degree cone. But this is a way to kind of get an overall view and a feel for what this scene looked like, and just kind of the vast nature of the scene. You can see that I've spliced into this video little still photos to just kind of help showcase what it is we're looking at. And we're coming up to where the so the suspect's vehicle was actually not there at the end of this. You'll see as we come up around to the end, that's where the suspect vehicle was. One of the things that 3D allows me to do is I can actually put things back where they were at different times, provided I have the correct evidence for that. And so here is where that suspect van ended up. And I was able to basically make a copy of those points and move them back and place them where it was at the time of the shooting. Another thing we can do is animations. This was a crash scene where a guy blew through a road construction crew that had flaggers. And oops, missed the play button. There we go. I can kind of show what happened and give the jury the ability to see what it looked like in real time. Another thing we like to do is different perspective views. So this one was a autoped where we really kind of ruled out everything, intoxication, distracted. There's nothing we could hang our hat on, and I wanted to show, what did this look like? What could the person have seen? And so this is a view of what the driver could have seen. Bringing it back. And you show this to a jury, and every one of them is hitting that brake pedal as soon as you see that person walking out. And so it just helps you kind of start to wonder, what was the driver looking at? What were they doing? And it just kind of helps paint that picture. This one I'm going to show the dash camera first, and I'm hoping you can see my mouse kind of circling. There's a pedestrian standing over waiting for the crosswalk. So we'll let this play. Keep your eye on that area. You'll see the pedestrian start to walk here once the light turns green. And so in this case, luckily pedestrian was not seriously hurt, but I had to try and figure out, how did this driver miss what to us on the video is absolutely obvious? Well, what we have to remember is it's all about perspective and where the dashboard camera is mounted versus where the driver sees. So again, I made a copy of the points of the vehicle, scanned it both inside and out, and I was able to place it back utilizing a number of different camera angles, place it back where it was sitting when it's waiting for the light to change. And so here is the red circle shows you the view from the camera. This is the view from the driver. So that pedestrian was right in the A-pillar. And as that vehicle starts to go forward, the pedestrian is walking, stays right in that blind spot of the A-pillar. Now, still the driver's fault, right? As drivers, we're supposed to make sure we clear our blind spots and all that, but it's just it makes a lot more sense when you see it like this and you realize that, okay, it was the fault of the driver not clearing those blind spots, but not as blatantly horrific as the dashboard camera would lead you to believe. This one we actually placed models of the victims back in the scene. This is a shooting where the suspect is walking up this road, shooting at our victims who are hiding behind these two trees that are coming up. So what I did was I found two members of our department that had the same height and weight as our victims. I was able to scan them in and show them hiding behind the trees. Now, the reason I'm showing that is the exit to this property is behind this shooter. This shooter was trying to claim self-defense, said these two folks had knives, and he felt threatened. So what we were trying to show here is the only reason you advance up that roadway when your exit is to the rear is so that you can get an angle to shoot and kill those two victims. This next one was kind of an interesting case. You can see kind of just over the shoulder there's a pickup truck that I've placed back in the scene. This guy claims that his ex-girlfriend, he could tell that she was damaging the far side of his truck. And he could see that by looking out the window. So he rushes out and beats her up. Now, this is a relatively minor case in the sense that we weren't going to spend a lot of time writing search warrants and things like that. And so with this scanning, I did completely from the street. I did 2 scans from the sidewalk required no search warrant because all I was doing was mapping the outside of the house, same as taking pictures from the sidewalk. And then I just kind of cleaned out everything that was in the windows, and I just sort of flew by each of the windows to show this perspective of what could have been seen. Now, I will warn you that I didn't perfect this video because the suspect pled out. As we fly past the little person I have standing there, there's kind of a disturbing look from the back of his face. I would have fixed that had this gone to court, but I just left it because there wasn't a sensitivity at the time. But you can kind of see as we fly along, you can see that perspective from each one of those windows. So it's just a very quick way for me to show what that suspect could have seen. And show that, really he could not have seen anything that she was doing on the far side of that vehicle. So another thing that we do, you kind of saw a preview of it, is trajectory. This is an officer-involved shooting, and as I said, this is showing you those 5-degree cones, and so this shows where they were standing at the time, which matches up with their body camera, matches up with their statements. And in this case, using the FaroZone software, I'm able to do this very quickly and change the colors. So I have red for one officer, blue for the other. We weren't able to pull trajectories from the suspect's rounds, but I could have done a third color for that. But this just allows you to visually show how it all looked at the time of the incident. This is another one where it's late at night and a guy is walking from work out to his car, and this car rolls up out on the street and just kind of bumps into the fire hydrant. And he says, "Well, that seems kind of weird." He goes, and both the front and the passenger and driver in this are dead. Had been shot multiple times. So these guys had actually been shot about 2.5 miles away, and ran to get away. And so this car was riddled with bullets. There were more trajectories than we were able to showcase here, but just kind of gives you an idea. And there were 2 shooters, so we can very easily show where those shooters were at, track the bullets, and showcase which ones were fired by which shooter. So this is just kind of a great way for us to showcase that. I'm going to play it again. If you kind of pay attention on the inside of the vehicle, you can see the trajectory rods going through the interior as well. I actually scanned inside with the rods in there by coming down through the sunroof, and just kind of helps paint that picture fully. Another thing that you can do is blood spatter. I've only had an opportunity to do this once on a case, and it worked out quite well. In this case, we knew where the spatter had come from, and so it wasn't ground shaking for this particular investigation, but this was a experiment that I did where I actually placed blood on a block at a certain height and smacked it, and then using the software was able to recreate the origin point of that blood spatter, and it was very close to where it had been at the time that we did this. So it tested out very well, and we had good results. Like I said, we haven't been able to use it in a case yet, but it does work very well. Going to combining a drone and a scanner. So this was a crash that we had, and this scene is quite large, as you'll see in the video here. And so what we have, just to kind of orient you, you can kind of see up along the upper left here, we've got some houses. This is a bluff. And so you've got a rather large drop off. And if you watch the light that's in the middle here when I hit play, you'll be able to see where the action comes from, where this car flew quite a long ways. So it actually flew about 174 feet in the air, and then bounced across a river, and landed on the far side. And so trying to document that scene is very hard to do. You can do it with the Faro. There are ways to kind of do that connection, but it would have been very time consuming. So what we did was we combined the drone and the Faro scans. So what you see in black and white is what we scanned at night with the scanner. We did 3 locations: the top of the bluff, down here on the bike path where it first landed, and then across the river into the trees where the car ends up. And so that's the black and white is the scans. And then I'll play it again here. The color is the drone that I did the next day. And then we're able to combine that again very easily using the FaroZone software, combine it into one larger scene. And now everything is spaced out correctly and registered together so that I'm able to do measurements and utilizing two different methods. One was an airborne going from where the vehicle took off to where it landed, and the other was doing the video analysis. I was able to show that that car was doing 116 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And so being able to combine those two meeting together allowed us to paint a very large scene. Another thing that you can do is buried bodies. So this was actually an experiment that we did at International Association of Forensic and Security Metrology. You heard it mentioned. I'm the president of that. I'll do a shameless plug. They do conferences every year, and they always do some type of hands-on activity. This year we did a buried body experiment, and the idea with buried bodies is that you start out and you do a scan before you start digging. You dig down till you find a piece of evidence, you do another scan, and so on until you make it down through. And what you end up with allows you to showcase where everything was found, and you can see the layers, the different points things were scanned. And then at the end, this video goes a little slow here, so I'll fast forward a bit. We can take out those layers and showcase what it looked like once all the dirt was removed, and you can see the body there in the hole. So that's kind of a lot of the uses of scanners and the 3D technology. The one thing I would say is it's basically the limits of your mind and what you can do. I've done a lot of different things that someone has been asked questions. Hey, could we do this? And I say, I don't know, I'll try, and we figure it out. So that's kind of the uses, the things that you should really consider, and the lessons we've learned from implementation of this. First of all, I recommend getting a hold of the guidelines for the use of terrestrial LiDAR scanners in criminal justice applications. That's a document that's out there on the internet. The FTCOE document, or excuse me, FTCOE is the organization that kind of put that together, but they got closed down. And so you can find this out on the internet. But I'm a part of the OSAT committee that is developing guidelines for using laser scanners in crime scene. And so as those come out, getting a hold of those and organizing yourself and utilizing those to help you understand how you should go about doing business. The most important four pieces of information I feel that comes out of all those is first of all training. So if you're going to implement this, you want to make sure you're trained in it. I will tell you that using a Faro laser scanner is extremely easy. The day after I took delivery of my Faro, before I'd been trained on it, we actually scanned a homicide scene. It was very easy. However, there are a lot of things that you just kind of need to understand. And so I really always say, you should go through the training. I hadn't had the training yet. We just gave it a whirl, and it worked out really, really well. But it could have been trouble for us had we, been challenged in court. So training is going to be your best route to make sure you're doing everything appropriately and setting yourself up for success. So making sure you get not just the initial training from the manufacturer, but ongoing training to make sure you keep up on your abilities and your skills are sharp. Maintenance of the equipment, that's something a lot of people don't think about when they're getting laser scanners or other pieces of equipment, is maintaining their maintenance. So the Faro scanner goes in once a year for calibration. That is a cost that you've just got to work into your budget, because if it doesn't go in for its annual maintenance and calibration, it can be challenged in court, and they can potentially get your products thrown out. Storage, I'm talking about storage of the data. So you are talking about massive quantities of data when you're doing 3D laser scanning. My cases average in the vicinity of 8 to 10 gig per case, and I've had them as big as 50 gig. That's gigabytes. So being able to store that somewhere, for us, we use evidence.com. It's very easy to We've got the package that allows for a lot of storage space, but even something as simple as CDs. I had to do research and discovered you can get up to 100 gigabytes on a CD if you've got the right burner and the right CD. So figuring out how you're going to store that stuff and maintain it is critical. And finally, viewing it. It's great to be able to do all this stuff, but if you can't show this in court, that's going to really hamper you. So be planning ahead and be lockstep with your DA's office and make sure you've got the ability to show things. The videos that I showed here are the simplest and easiest way to do it. You can do these fly-through videos. It takes a couple of minutes to throw one together on Faro Zone. But sometimes you want to be able to have that ability to manually take them through the scene and showcase certain things, do measurements live, all that kind of stuff. If you can do that in court, you're going to need a pretty beefy computer. So planning ahead, whether that means you go for a gaming laptop, which is what I use. When I go into court, I'll just take a gaming laptop in there because that allows you to showcase the 3D data. Or if you're going to do the videos or have a full-on desktop that you go and set up, whatever, you just got to plan ahead and think about that. So those are kind of the big things. With that, I'm going to wrap up. I'll leave this up here for just a second. That's my email address. If anybody has any questions that don't get answered and you would like to reach out, you're certainly welcome to. And then I will stop sharing and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Brian. That was really a great perspective on how 3D scanning is changing the game for investigators and forensic teams. Next, we'll shift gears a bit to talk about funding and how to get these technology programs funded. Our final speaker is Lisa Hurst, Director of North America for GTH DNA. And Lisa has more than 25 years of experience shaping forensic policy and legislation. And she's going to walk us through key funding opportunities available for agencies exploring new technologies. And Lisa couldn't be here with us live today, but she's recorded a presentation to share her insights.
Good afternoon. One of the questions that we get quite commonly from law enforcement is they have a great idea, excited about a new technology, but don't know how to find the money for it. I don't have exact answers for you today, but I do have a few ideas of places to look. So to start, local funding is always going to be the best. A few different reasons for that. You get community buy-in, programmatic awareness. Obviously, being in your local budget is going to just be better certainty for ongoing budget cycles to make sure you always have that money there. But of course, local budgets are thin, and getting a new program can be hard to get in. The best programs are always going to be, and the best funded programs are going to be those that really keep track of their metrics. So this is putting the cart a little bit before the horse here, if you will, but keeping track of not just how many times did you use the technology, but how many times did it lead to an arrest, a prosecution? Did you exonerate anyone? Did you streamline investigations? Can you put any numbers behind that? This is the way to get your city, county councils to invest in long-term programs. It might, again, be hard to get them to invest in the startup of a new program. So again, this is sort of a little bit more ongoing metrics to keep, but I did want to just at least call that out. Local funding, you're not going to be continuously having to apply for new grants, find new sources of income. State funding then would be the next level of opportunity to get to. I would just highly recommend knowing your state administering agency. Every state has a state agency that manages their federal and state grants. You can find yours if you're not sure which one it is. I've included a link there from the National Criminal Justice Association where you can find your SAA, your state administering agency. They oversee the federal grants, the state grants. They may also have other connections to local opportunities, to some nonprofit projects. if they may know of opportunities in pipeline that they can steer you towards, even if that application period isn't open yet. So these are just good people to be in connection with, to pick their brains, reach out to them. They are there to help you at that state level. We also have a number of states that do some local earmark budgets. This varies from state to state, but if you happen to be in a jurisdiction where maybe your chief or your sheriff has some better political connections at that state level, the state legislature, really good idea also to speak about them about opportunities for earmarking, setting aside specific pots of money potentially within the state budget. Again, not every state will allow this. Even if they do allow it, it may be very specific to transportation projects or something like that. But it's worth asking. Each state does it a little bit differently. And also, you could look into establishing a state program. This is just an example from Florida, where the Sheriff's Association got together, decided that rapid DNA as a technology was something as a state that they wanted to support. They went to the legislature. They asked for a grant program to be established. They were successful. They got about $2.5 million for 10 counties to get rapid DNA at booking stations up and running. So this is just a great model for other states to look at. If you've got a technology that a lot of law enforcement throughout the state may be interested in, take a look, consider if maybe your state association may be interested in taking a position and getting started. But what people really want to ask about is the federal opportunities. The notice of funding opportunities this is the same word as grant, but the Department of Justice is really insisting on using the term NOFO now. Just a few high-level notes. They are looking at consolidating some of the grant-making offices. There are more grants this year that will have sanctuary city or sanctuary state certifications attached to the grant. And we do have some rolling delays as the new administration was behind schedule in getting some of those NOFOs posted. Most are out now, but we are still seeing some rolling delays, and there will be delays on awards as well. So these are just a few of the grants at Department of Justice. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are definitely grants where technology purposes may be something, are definitely allowable areas. A few of them, if it's in italics, those are currently posted. All of this information on these grants can be found at these two websites for ojp.gov and cops.usdoj.gov. I would recommend monitoring these sites. They can have some different requirements and restrictions based on a technology, based on a new administration. We used to see a lot of gun violence focus. Now we're seeing a lot of immigration focus and just general violence kind of focus. So take a look at those. Those grants are out there. A lot of your agencies probably are already somewhat familiar with them. The Burn JAG in particular has a great application for technology purchases. I would also recommend that you don't forget about the Homeland Security Department when it comes to technology and homeland protection and or emergency preparedness response. Homeland Security grants are great. Now, you do have to work through your local regional emergency. You do not apply straight to Department of Homeland Security. You work through regional plans. You need to be in the plan. This example on the right side of the screen is just an example of something that we had developed with Rapid in mind specifically here. But it's important to be able to fit your project into the national preparedness goals. You need to also figure out where it fits in the threat hazard identification and risk assessment, or THERA as it's called. And then also, is it on the authorized equipment list? Now, as an applicant, you don't necessarily need to know this yourself. If you can, all of these little bits of information, if you can get in touch with your regional emergency planning agency, they will have experts there who, if you can make the right pitch to get this into the state's plan, you may have some success, and they can help walk through some of these required sort of certifications for that. So the one thing I wanted to really bring to your attention, though, is we have a good opportunity right now with the one big beautiful bill which Congress passed earlier this year. This is going to be a significant amount of new funding coming to your states. A lot of the details are still a little bit fluid. But again, your SAA, your state administering agency, ought to have a good handle on what's coming in, or when it comes in, they'll know. And just, I'd like to mention that even if you are unable to get your technology to fit into one of these slots that I'll talk about in a second, you may still find that there is additional funding coming into your agency for other purposes within your agency that do fit into some of these slots. And that may free up some funding, which may have otherwise been earmarked for those projects. So there could be some fluidity within agencies on money for some technology and other law enforcement focused types of projects that we haven't seen in a few years. So I just think it's a really good time to be ready, be positioning yourself. The overarching theme within this one big beautiful bill, which I mentioned with the slots, if you will, opioid response and immigration control. If you can figure out how to position the technology that you're interested in into an opioid response or an immigration control type of project, this is your in for a lot of the next bits of information that I'm going to talk to you about. So on the Homeland Security side, there's 10 billion. Now, some of this is for wall construction. It's maybe that's a lot of money. Construction is costly, but it does include opioid and criminal alien detection. So again, how does your technology help address drug crimes? How does it help identify immigration detection, especially alien criminal immigration detection? Department of Homeland Security, we're going to see a little bit of a top off, if you will, for that burn jag and some of the COPS grants. So that will be available, plus another 3.5 billion, again with the B, for law enforcement purposes, including themes that date specific or that relate specifically to immigration and opioid detection, enforcement, getting drugs off the street, and identifying illegal immigrants. So the timing, this is a lot of money. I mean, I was talking about billions with a B. That's a big number. The money, it seems, is beginning to seem like it's probably not going to be distributed through what we would consider traditional means. So it's not necessarily coming out in a specific grant. And in fact, I'm starting to hear that some of that money may already be flowing to local agencies, which again goes back to the recommendation: position your technology project now. Make sure that your chain of command all the way up is aware not just of the use case that you're trying to get, the technology you're trying to get, but again, if you can fit it into a drug response and immigration response, make sure they have that talking point. You may not hear of the extra funding as it may flow into some of your agencies, but someone at the top will. And you want to make sure that this is on their radar. So just a little, know that this is going to be a little bit like Christmas with this money coming in. And if you want that Red Ryder BB gun, you need to be positioning now and thinking about how can I bring this up in the right scenario, over and over again without being annoying, but how can you just position this as many times as possible so that the chain of command, when funding does become available, they think of your project immediately. Briefly, the federal earmark process, another great opportunity. This is a little bit more, it's an easy process. But you do need to start thinking about it now, because it does require reaching out to your congressional delegation. Those are elected officials. there are probably local processes that you need to follow with that outreach. This is great money. It does not require a match. It doesn't come with a lot of strings attached. If you want to get into the next process, the applications will post for FY27. They'll post in February, March 26th. The funding, there is a long roadway for this. The money will probably be available late 2027, maybe mid 2027. But once you have gotten to this June date, June 2026, when that committee list is made public, if your project is on the committee list, the money is yours. There will still be some paperwork with DOJ to fill out, but the money is yours. The paperwork will just be kind of making sure that the money is being accounted for. Again, just as an example with Rapid DNA, these are some projects that we've worked with in the past. Rapid DNA has been very popular. I think law enforcement technologies in general are very popular with Congress. Great success rate. Funding can be anywhere. We've seen projects as little as 30,000 and projects as big as 3 million. So again, the next cycle is coming up in 2027 for earmarks. Strongly recommend if you're interested, talk to some people about that. And lastly, don't forget your nonprofit associations, police benevolent associations, sometimes retail associations, especially if you've got a theft prevention angle that you can bring in. And there are some national groups, the Pew Charitable Trust, Arnold Ventures, Buffett Foundation, which have increasingly been interested in supporting criminal justice initiatives. So those are some great opportunities as well. And I wish you good luck. Happy to help if I can provide any additional information on these grant opportunities.
All right, we'll now transition into our Q&A session. If you haven't already submitted a question, you can do so using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I'll start by going through a few that have come in so far. For Lieutenant Hawkins, what is the accuracy of rapid DNA compared to traditional lab testing?
So when we initially got our rapid DNA instrument, we did a validation study with the Indiana State Police, and our results were 100% with their conventional DNA testing. Rapid DNA essentially utilizes the same testing as conventional DNA. And this would be a better question probably for Thermo Fisher, but essentially it doesn't take the steps to it doesn't have the capability to do the mixture, degraded or mixture DNA like some conventional DNA standards do. However, I would point out that for criminal cases, we utilize our rapid DNA for probable cause. So the idea being, if we find a subject in the area of a burglary where there was blood left at the scene, and we're able to get a sample from the subject and run the sample blood at the crime scene, we have probable cause for an arrest right then and there that evening. But we will also send those samples out to our conventional state DNA lab for confirmatory testing for the criminal procedures.
Thanks, Lieutenant. This one says it's for Chris. What is the status of federal funding for state and local law enforcement funding, including technology?
Well, that's a great question, and the status right now is kind of up in the air, particularly given the extent to which the government is shut down. And as Lisa Hurst mentioned, some of the NOFOs have not gone out. In fact, most of the Burn Jag NOFOs have not gone out because of that. So right now, a lot of that federal funding is in a holding pattern because of the administration kind of before the shutdown was kind of behind on some things, or I don't say behind, but slow on some things. And then the shutdown occurred. So a lot of that money is still up in the air and is not in the hands of your SAA yet. But let me say this, again, referring to Lisa's presentation, My organization, NCJA, is actually the membership organization for the state administering agencies. So if there's anything that we can do at NCJA to kind of help facilitate your relationship with your state administering agency, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. I can be found on the website. My email is there. I'll put it in the chat as well. But you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and we can kind of help you with some of the issues around creating a relationship with your SAA if you don't already have one.
Thanks, Chris. Lieutenant Hawkins, perhaps you can answer this one. It says, what kind of training is required for rapid DNA?
So you'll receive training from, well, I'll speak from Thermo Fisher because that's who we utilize. You do receive training on the instrument when you get it. But their whole design is designed for law enforcement and military applications. And in saying that, we all like to pretend that we're the smartest guy in the room, but the fact of the matter is, um, this system is designed for quite literally anybody to be able to utilize. If you know how to take a sample and know how to properly collect and package that sample and get it to the rapid DNA instrument, you literally are just typing in your case number and agency information, taking the sample, placing it into a cartridge, and then you place the cartridge into the instrument. It's completely self-contained. The instrument does all the testing for you, and then it will give you the results in 90 minutes. I'd like to tell people that if you're comfortable making toast, you can easily master rapid DNA.
It looks like we have one more for you, Lieutenant Hawkins. People are interested in hearing more about how to use teeth in the rapid hit.
Sure. So not too long ago, Thermo Fisher came out with their Intel Plus cartridges in their 2.0 software, which definitely was a game changer in the arena of teeth. Prior to that, we would utilize bone. Bone samples do work well, but they do have some issues, especially if you're looking at something that's a sample that's very degraded. We would have some issues with some of those samples. However, with the upgrade in their software and the Intel Plus, which is the consumable cartridge, that allowed us to really take some of these samples that we hadn't been able to generate and develop profiles on before and actually get the profiles. So now when we have a unidentified human remains case or a case where we need to make an identification, if we have a choice between bone and teeth, our investigators will typically run the teeth sample first, just because we've been getting such good results from it ever since their software and consumable upgrade.
All right, and we have one more for you. Do you actually create a searchable database using rapid hit? If so, then what regulations are there for that?
Sure. So we do have a software system we use. It's called Small Pond. I believe there are several different databases you can utilize. That just happened to be the one that our administration went when we implemented rapid DNA. But essentially, it's covered in our policies, procedures, what goes in there. Rapid DNA is not meant to circumvent the Fourth Amendment. It's not meant to circumvent your state police lab. It is, Fisher's Rapid DNA is not a replacement for the Indiana State Police Lab. They've been a fantastic partner throughout this whole process with us. They've been a wealth of knowledge and just a fantastic partner. So we have set protocols in place, procedures in place, and we work with the Indiana State Police Lab in order to make sure that everything we are doing is in line and not outside of the realm of what would cause us issues.
Thanks, Lieutenant. And that's all the questions that we have. So that wraps up our session for today. A huge thank you again to our sponsors, our speakers, and to all of you for taking the time to join us today. If you sent a question that we didn't get to during the Q&A, we'll be working with our speakers to follow up this week. You can visit www.techhalo.com to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and stay updated on upcoming events, or download the TechHalo mobile app and follow us on Instagram for the latest updates and event highlights. I'll share a slide with that information in just a second. And we'll also be sending an email later this week with a recording of the event, along with our speakers and sponsors' contact information in case you'd like to reach out directly. Thank you again, and I hope you guys all have a great day.